I never thought I'd live to see my mother cry at my doorstep, calling me the only one who can save us. The same mother who once said I was too simple to survive in this world. It's strange how silence feels heavier when the people who broke you start whispering your name again. For years, I was the shadow in my own house, the quiet one, the one they laughed at for wearing plain clothes, for choosing peace over pride. My sister called me the family's embarrassment, and my father nodded as if she spoke the truth. I used to wonder if dignity meant anything in a home ruled by reputation. But that day, when they stood outside my small apartment, faces pale with fear and guilt, I realized something. The world always circles back to the ones it underestimates. I didn't open the door right away. I just watched them through the window, trembling, remembering every insult they once dressed as advice. Because before I saved them, I needed them to remember exactly who they destroyed. I grew up in a house that looked perfect from the outside. Polished floors, shining chandeliers, and laughter that sounded rehearsed. To everyone else, we were the Hayes family, successful, respectable, admired. But behind those polished smiles lived a different truth, one that I learned to swallow quietly. My mother, Victoria, loved to host dinners where every plate sparkled and every guest was someone important. She had a favorite line she repeated like prayer: "People should envy us, not pity us." My father, Daniel, was her proud shadow, a man who measured love in achievements and approval. And my sister, Olivia, well, she was their masterpiece. Elegant, confident, the daughter who carried the family's name with grace. Then there was me, Emma, the quiet one. The one who wore plain dresses, who preferred books over parties, who never knew how to say the right thing at the right time. I tried, I really did. I smiled at their jokes, helped my mother in the kitchen when guests were gone, listened to Olivia's stories about her expensive handbags and perfect marriage. But no matter what I did, I always felt like an unwanted echo in their glamorous house. At family dinners, the difference was clear. Olivia's opinions were gold. Mine, invisible. When I mentioned my job at a local school, my father smiled politely and changed the subject to Olivia's husband, Ryan, and his business achievements. My mother once whispered to me across the table, "Emma, you should try to be a little more like your sister, learn how to fit in." I laughed softly, pretending it didn't sting. Sometimes, my grandmother Ruth would take my hand under the table and squeeze it gently, a silent reminder that someone still saw me. "Don't chase their approval, child," she'd whisper when no one was listening. "They are chasing emptiness." But I didn't listen. I thought maybe if I just tried harder, smiled longer, they'd notice me too. I started dressing up for dinners, speaking when I had nothing to say, pretending I understood their world. Yet every time, my mother's eyes would linger on me, not with pride, but with quiet disappointment. One night, during a family gathering, Olivia raised her glass and said, "To success, to class, and to never settling for less." Everyone cheered. I lifted my glass too, but her eyes met mine, sharp as glass. "Even you, Emma," she added, smirking. "Someday you'll realize love isn't enough. Money is what keeps respect alive." The table laughed. I forced a smile. But something in me cracked that night, not from anger, but from the realization that I didn't belong in their version of love. Later, when I went to my room, I overheard my mother's voice from the hallway. Soft, cold, and certain. "She'll never be one of us." I froze in place, every memory of laughter and warmth shattering in an instant. That was the first night I stopped trying to be seen. And the first night I began to wonder what would happen if one day they truly needed me. The conflict began the moment I told them I was getting married. I can still picture that evening, the dining room glowing with gold light, Olivia laughing at one of Ryan's pretentious stories, my mother pretending to be impressed. I cleared my throat, nervous but hopeful. "I wanted to tell you all. Ethan proposed. And I said yes." For a second, silence. Forks paused in mid-air. Then Olivia laughed, not out of surprise, but mockery. "Ethan? The teacher," she said, looking around as if it were a joke everyone should laugh at. "You're marrying him." My father's jaw tightened. My mother didn't even look at me. She simply said, "Emma, don't embarrass us." I tried to explain. Ethan was kind, decent, hardworking. He didn't care about their money or their status. But that only made things worse. My mother sighed as if I had confessed a sin. "You're repeating your mistakes, Emma. Always choosing simplicity over sense." Ryan leaned back with his usual smirk. Maybe she's doing it for attention, he said. You know how quiet ones crave a little spotlight. Olivia chuckled. Spotlight? Please. She's never had one in her life. Their laughter felt like needles. My father finally spoke, his tone cold. This family has a reputation. I won't have my daughter marrying a man who can't even afford the life you're used to. But I don't need that life, I said softly. I just need peace. My mother slammed her napkin down. Peace doesn't pay bills, Emma. Wake up. I looked around that table, every face proud, polished, poisonous. The people who were supposed to love me most couldn't stand the thought of me choosing happiness over appearances. That night, I left the table early, but Olivia followed me to my room. You think love will protect you, she said, her tone dripping with pity. When the world laughs at you for marrying beneath you, don't come crying to us. I turned to her. I'd rather be laughed at by the world than disrespected by my own family. Her smile faded for the first time. You'll regret that, she whispered. A week later, my engagement became the family's favorite rumor. At gatherings, I heard whispers, Emma's marrying a poor man, followed by smirks and sympathetic glances. Even distant relatives sent messages asking if I was sure. My father stopped speaking to me altogether. When Ethan came to visit, he was polite, respectful, even brought flowers for my mother. She accepted them without meeting his eyes. You seem like a good man, she said flatly, but you're not the kind of man my daughter needs. Ethan smiled awkwardly. With respect, I think that's Emma's choice. Her expression turned to ice. Not while she carries our name. That was it. The breaking point. I realized they weren't just rejecting him. They were rejecting me. The next morning, my father gathered everyone in the living room. If you go through with this marriage, Emma, he said, his voice echoing, you will not be part of this family anymore. My heart raced, but my voice didn't shake. Then I guess I was never really part of it to begin with. I packed my things in silence. Grandma Ruth cried quietly in the corner, slipping a folded note into my hand as I hugged her goodbye. When truth hurts, it's because it's real, she whispered. As I stepped out of that mansion, I glanced back one last time. The house looked beautiful under the evening sky, but for the first time, I saw it for what it really was, a cage gilded with pride. I thought leaving would be the end of it. But I was wrong. Because sometimes, walking away doesn't end a story, it begins a reckoning. After I left home, I thought distance would bring peace. I was wrong. In the Hayes family, even silence travels faster than forgiveness. It started with the phone calls I didn't answer, my mother's voice on the line, not to apologize, but to remind me of what I'd lost. You chose him, she'd say coldly. So don't expect our name to protect you anymore. But I didn't need their name. Ethan and I built our own little world, small apartment, steady jobs, laughter that didn't need an audience. For a while, it was enough. Until the gossip began. At every wedding, dinner, or gathering, there was always someone who mentioned me, or rather, the version of me my family had created. Poor Emma, they'd say, gave up luxury for love. My sister Olivia made sure those whispers never died. She'd smile and shrug, saying, well, some people choose struggle. She didn't know that every time she said my name, someone recorded it, repeated it, and sent it back to me like poison wrapped in silk. Then came the company crisis. My father's empire, the same one he had once called the Hayes legacy, began to crack. Rumors of mismanagement, deals collapsing, and investors pulling out spread like wildfire. I heard about it from Grandma Ruth, her voice trembling. They won't admit it, child, but they are losing everything. When I saw the news article, Hayes and Clark Industries under investigation, I felt a strange mix of sadness and justice. But I said nothing. I didn't reach out. I just watched from a distance as the House of Pride began to tremble. A few weeks later, I saw them again, at a charity gala I attended with Ethan. I didn't plan on going, but fate can be cruelly cinematic. Olivia was there, standing under the chandelier like she owned the light. When she noticed me, her smile froze. The crowd turned. For the first time, I was the one they whispered about, but not with pity. With curiosity. Emma, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Didn't expect to see you here. I thought you didn't do events like these anymore. I smiled softly. I thought you didn't attend them without pretending to be happy. The air shifted. For once, she had no comeback. But her husband, Ryan, stepped in with his usual arrogance. Still dressing like a schoolteacher, I see, he sneered. Guess simplicity never leaves you. I leaned closer. And I guess greed never leaves you. For a moment, the whole hall went quiet. Eyes turned. My mother's face went pale. She hurried over, forcing a smile for the onlookers. Emma, dear, she whispered between clenched teeth, don't make a scene. Funny, I replied softly. You never minded when the scene was me being humiliated. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding, not from anger, but from something deeper. Something that had been growing inside me for years, the realization that I no longer needed their approval to feel alive. That night, after the event, I received a call from Mason, the family lawyer. His tone was urgent. Emma, there's something you should know, he said. It's about the investigation, and your brother-in-law. I froze, gripping the phone tighter. What about him? Mason hesitated. Ryan's been using your father's name for offshore accounts. And Olivia knows. The room felt cold. The echo of their laughter, their taunts, all came flooding back. They had destroyed my dignity for years, and now they were destroying themselves. I hung up the phone slowly, my reflection catching in the window. For the first time, I didn't see the quiet, invisible daughter. I saw someone else, someone ready to face the storm they had created. Because this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. And deep down, I knew, the next time I walked into that house, it wouldn't be as their embarrassment. It would be as their reckoning. Betrayal never arrives as thunder. It creeps in quietly, like a familiar voice calling your name. When Mason told me about Ryan's offshore accounts, I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding, a mistake my father wasn't aware of. But deep down, something in me already knew. I'd seen too many lies disguised as smiles in that family to mistake this for anything else. Over the next few days, Mason sent me the documents. Account statements, forged signatures, hidden transactions, all under my father's name. Ryan had used his position in the company to launder money, and Olivia had signed off on multiple transfers. Every signature carried the same swirl of confidence, the same arrogance that once told me I wasn't good enough. My hands trembled as I read each page. Every number felt like a slap, every signature a scar. They had risked everything, our family's name, my father's legacy, for greed. And still, somehow, I was the one they called the shame. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain outside sounded like whispers, my family's voices echoing in my head. You'll never be one of us. You're too simple. You don't understand what power means. But maybe I did understand. Power wasn't in money or status. It was in truth. And they had just handed me the sharpest truth of all. 2 days later, I went back to that house. The first time in months. My mother opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. Emma, she said cautiously, what are you doing here? I walked past her without answering. The house looked the same marble floors, same portraits of perfect smiles. But now, every corner felt hollow. They were all in the living room. My father, pale and tired, Olivia, pretending calm, Ryan, checking his phone like nothing was wrong. I know everything, I said quietly. Olivia's eyes narrowed. Everything about what? I placed the documents on the coffee table. The sound of the folder hitting the glass was louder than I expected. About the accounts, the signatures, the lies. My father's face drained of color. He picked up the papers, his hands shaking. Olivia, what is this? Ryan stepped forward. This is nonsense. She's making it up. Really? I said, stepping closer. Because Mason found everything. He has proof. You used Dad's name for your dirty business. Olivia stood, her voice rising. You have no right to come here and accuse us. You left this family. I didn't leave, I said softly. You threw me out. The silence that followed was suffocating. My father's eyes filled with tears, not of guilt, but of humiliation. How could you do this? He whispered, looking at Olivia. Ryan snapped. Don't listen to her, Daniel. She's trying to ruin us out of jealousy. I laughed, a cold, broken laugh. Jealousy? Of what? A crumbling empire built on lies. My mother suddenly stepped forward, her voice trembling. Emma, stop this madness. You don't understand what's at stake. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. You spent your life teaching me that reputation was everything. Now you're about to lose the only thing you ever worshipped. My words hung in the air like smoke. No one moved. Then, Olivia's tone turned sharp. If this gets out, you'll destroy our entire family. Is that what you want? To see us humiliated? For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I whispered, You already humiliated yourselves. I just found the evidence. That was when my father's anger turned, not toward them, but toward me. Enough, he shouted, slamming the folder shut. If you care about this family, you'll stay silent. Don't ruin what's left. My throat tightened. You're asking me to protect the people who ruined you. He looked away. You've done enough damage already. Those words hit harder than any slap. I stared at him, realizing there was no place left for me here. No voice. No love. Only blame. When I turned to leave, my mother's final words followed me down the hall. Don't ever come back, Emma. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy. I stood in the driveway, drenched in betrayal. The home I had once dreamed of belonging to had become the place where truth was punished and lies were rewarded. For the first time, I didn't cry. I felt empty, then strangely calm. That calm that comes before something breaks. When I reached home, Ethan was waiting. He looked at my face and didn't ask. He just said softly, What did they do this time? I looked up at him, my voice steady. They destroyed themselves. I'm just going to help them realize it. He frowned. Emma, what are you planning? I walked past him to the window, watching the storm clouds fade. My reflection stared back, not the timid girl they mocked, but someone colder, sharper. I'm done defending my dignity, I whispered. Now, I'll let the truth do it for me. That night, I gathered every document, every recording Mason had sent me. My hands no longer trembled. The fear that once controlled me was gone. In its place was something quiet, a resolve that felt like peace and fire at the same time. They had disowned me, humiliated me, stripped me of belonging. But they forgot one thing: you can't destroy someone who has nothing left to lose. And as I sealed the envelope that would expose them all, I realized this wasn't revenge anymore. It was justice, long overdue. And this time, I wouldn't whisper the truth. I'd let the whole world hear it. After the folder hit the glass in that living room, something inside me changed. The part that had learned to smile through pain closed up like a wound and left behind something else, a steady, hard clarity. I could have screamed. I could have begged. Instead, I sat very still and listened to the truth as if it were a weapon I had finally been given. Ethan held my hand that night and said, You don't have to do this alone. His voice was small, but steady. I nodded because I knew he meant it, and because I needed the quiet support. But this was not his fight to lead. This was mine. First, I rebuilt myself in tiny, careful steps. I stopped answering every insult in my head. I put on sensible shoes and started running in the mornings, not to outrun the past, but to prove to myself I could move forward. I read contracts until legal terms felt less like secrets. I learned to hold my face calm while my heart was pounding. Every small victory, a document understood, a call returned, a quiet hour of sleep, became a brick in something I was building. Mason became an uneasy ally. He handed me more papers, invoices, timestamps, emails that linked Ryan to shell companies. He kept whispering, If this leaks, it won't be small. That line sat in my mind like a promise and a warning. I told him, Then it should not be small. He hesitated, then agreed to secure the originals. Grandma Ruth surprised me with something else: patience. She taught me how to speak without shouting and how to let the world witness the truth on its own terms. They taught you manners to hide, she said. Use them now to reveal. Her hands smelled like lavender and truth. I listened. The plan took shape slowly, the way a careful trap is set. I would not be the woman who stormed crying into rooms. I would be the quiet woman who presented facts and let the consequences do the rest. First, I made copies, physical and digital, secured with Mason's help. Then I reached out to one trusted reporter I'd met during school fundraisers, someone honest who had a reputation for thoroughness. I told her I had documents that proved fraud and that the motive was clear: greed disguised as legacy. Are you sure you want to go public? The reporter asked over the phone. Yes, I said. Because silence protected them for years. Truth won't protect them anymore. We agreed on timing, the company's annual gala. It was cruelly perfect. The whole family would be there, cameras, investors, the town's attention. Revealing it there would make it impossible to sweep under a rug. It would force a public reckoning. I remembered my mother's line, people should envy us, not pity us. I wanted the world to see the cost of that envy. Still, I was careful. I rehearsed my face in the mirror until it looked like someone who could hold a room's gaze. I made backup plans, encrypted drives, copies filed with Mason, and a sealed packet with Grandma Ruth's name on it, to be opened if anything happened to me. That last one felt like insurance for my own courage. At night, doubt crept in, a cold, small voice asking if I'd become the very thing I hated, someone who destroyed for satisfaction. But then I looked at the faces of my younger students, at Ethan's steady hands, at Grandma Ruth's tired smile, and I remembered why this needed to be done. This was not about vengeance for pleasure, it was about setting a wrong right, about dignity returned to its owner. The weeks before the gala were quiet and loud at the same time, quiet in planning, loud in the thrum of my heart. I would walk past the mansion sometimes and feel nothing and everything at once. A plan can be a form of prayer, I thought, a way to demand justice without begging. On the morning of the gala, I sat at my kitchen table, papers sealed in an envelope beside my cup of tea. Ethan kissed my forehead and said, "Whatever happens tonight, I'm with you." I folded my hands around the warm mug, steadied my breathing, and walked to the closet for the dress I had chosen. Simple, honest, impossible to mistake for anything but myself. As I stepped out the door, the envelope in my bag felt like both a promise and a threat. The house glittered in the distance, unaware I held the storm. I didn't know if I would have the courage to hand it over. But I did know one thing. The truth had a way of moving people who refused to change. Tonight, I would test that truth. The chandeliers glittered like 1,000 quiet witnesses as I stepped into the ballroom. Laughter rippled through the crowd, glasses clinked, and the family that had spent years pretending to be unbreakable was on full display, smiling, polished, untouchable. The annual gala was always their stage. But tonight, it would become their mirror. Ryan stood near the podium, perfectly groomed, greeting guests with that charming deceit that had fooled everyone. Everyone but me. Beside him, my father looked proud, basking in the glow of a legacy built on my silence. My mother, as poised as ever, scanned the room for attention like it was air. When my eyes met Mason's across the crowd, he gave a subtle nod. Everything was in place. The truth sat quietly on a USB drive with the event's media team, waiting for the cue. The speeches began. My father's voice echoed through the hall, full of practiced warmth. Tonight, we celebrate family, legacy, and the strength of unity. Unity. The word hung in the air like a lie too heavy to float. As the applause began, I stepped forward. My heels clicked sharply against the marble, and the sound sliced through the noise like a warning. I took the microphone before anyone could stop me. "Before we toast to unity," I said, my voice steady but low, "perhaps we should talk about the truth." A silence fell. You could almost hear hearts falter. Ryan's polite smile stiffened. "This isn't the time, Emma." "Oh, I think it's exactly the time," I replied, my gaze locked on him. "You see, family isn't built on lies and stolen signatures." A murmur ran through the audience. My mother's face went pale. My father shifted in discomfort, trying to control the narrative. "Emma," he began carefully, "if you have something to say, we can discuss it privately." I looked at him, years of suppressed pain condensing into one sentence. "That's what you said when you took my name off the will." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras, meant to record charity speeches, now captured scandal. I turned toward the big screen behind me and gave Mason the smallest nod. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered, and then emails, contracts, and payment records appeared. Ryan's company accounts. My father's signatures. My mother's letters approving transactions. Each file, date, and amount appeared with perfect clarity. The truth, illuminated for everyone to see. Whispers turned to outrage. One investor stood up, shouting, "Is this real?" Another muttered, "This is fraud." Ryan lunged forward. "This is manipulation. She forged these." Mason stepped into view. "Actually," he said calmly, "I verified them myself. Every signature, every timestamp. They are real." My father's hand slammed the podium. "You planned this?" I met his eyes, the same eyes that once looked at me with pride, then pity, then nothing.
No, I said.
You did, years ago. I'm just showing everyone what you built.
The tension broke like glass. My mother tried to reach for me, her voice trembling.
Emma, please, think about what you're doing. You're ruining us. I took a breath that felt like freedom. You ruined us the day you taught me silence was love. The room was chaos, guests leaving, cameras flashing, security unsure who to protect. In the midst of it all, my father stood frozen, Ryan pale and shaking, my mother silently crying behind her perfect mask. Then Grandma Ruth's voice, soft but clear, came from the corner.
She didn't ruin this family.
She just stopped pretending it was whole. Everything went still. Even the air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves had been waiting for that truth. I looked at them one last time, the people who had raised me to be invisible, and I felt something I hadn't in years, peace.
I placed the microphone down gently. The world will judge what you did.
I already have. And with that, I turned and walked away, the echo of my heels following me like a heartbeat finally steady again. Behind me, the applause began, hesitant at first, then strong. Not everyone clapped, but those who did understood.
It wasn't for revenge.
It was for survival. As the doors closed behind me, I whispered to myself, justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it just stands up. And that night, it did. The morning after the gala, the world felt strangely quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore, only settles. The newspapers had already picked up the story. Family empire collapses after internal fraud exposure. My family name was on every headline, but for the first time, it wasn't me they were whispering about. I watched from my apartment window as the sun broke through the clouds, gold bleeding into the city skyline. My phone buzzed non-stop, reporters, relatives, even strangers trying to reach me.
But I didn't answer.
For years, I had begged to be heard.
Now, I chose silence.
Later that week, I received a letter, handwritten, trembling, signed by my mother. I never thought the girl we called Simple would be the only one with strength. Forgive me, if you can.
I didn't know whether to cry or smile.
Her words didn't erase the years of humiliation, but they carried something rare, honesty.
And that, I could live with.
Ryan and my father vanished from the social scene, their empires sold to cover debts and lawsuits. The mansion I grew up in stood empty, its gates locked, like a monument to pride. Mason said they tried to reach me through him, wanting to talk, to explain.
But what was left to explain?
Some people only understand respect when they lose it, I told him quietly. I went back to my small office that week, the same one I'd built with the money they once mocked as insignificant. Clients greeted me warmly, not out of pity, but respect. My employees looked at me differently, too, as if my story had changed something in them. One afternoon, as I closed a deal with a major investor, she looked at me and said, "I've heard about you. You didn't just expose a family, you reminded people that silence has a limit." That night, I walked by the river, the same place I once came to cry after they disowned me. The air was calm, the water soft with reflection. I thought about my childhood dinners, about the laughter that never reached me, about the girl who tried so hard to belong.
She was gone now.
In her place stood a woman who finally belonged to herself. As I looked up at the fading sunset, I whispered the line that had carried me through everything. They mocked my simplicity, but it was that simplicity that taught me what they never understood: dignity doesn't need to be loud. The world will move on, the headlines will fade, and my family will rebuild whatever pieces they can.
But I don't need to be part of that story anymore. I've written my own.
Sometimes, revenge isn't about destruction, it's about restoration. About standing where they thought you'd fall and realizing you no longer need their approval to rise. And in that quiet, as the river shimmered beneath the moonlight, I felt something powerful: peace. Not the kind that forgets, but the kind that forgives without returning.
Moral: dignity is the quietest form of power.
Those who reject you for being simple will one day learn that respect cannot be inherited, it must be earned. And when truth finally speaks, even the loudest lies fall silent.